Hello, hello, hello. Good Sunday afternoon,
Hello.
everybody. How you doing, Erica?
I'm blessed. How are you?
I am also blessed and highly favored and feeling good. Today is,
Yes, ma'am.
Slouchy Sunday. Today is Slouchy Sunday, which means, I'm not wearing anything with hooks or buckles, no zippers. I'm free, as I hope you are as well.
Free to be me every day. Yes.
I love it. So I'm very excited to be talking to you today because we've known each other for a little bit now, but we've been sort of networking in the same circle for about a year.
Yep.
And what I love about you, one of the many things, is I love your posts about leadership and I love your posts about the senior community and being a better advocate for elders, for our elders, not just elders, for like our elders.
Yes.
We need to treat our elders with respect. And there's a lot to be said about ageism. We won't get into that because that'll be a whole nother segment. But Erica, I
Yes.
want to hear from you because when I asked you what you wanted to talk about, again, you were like these hard conversations during right now when we're talking about leadership. How do you have them? But before we get into that, you got a whole alphabet behind your name, and I need to know. I need to know all of
Alphabet
these.
soup.
Come on, Alphabet Soup. Let me know what they're about. Why don't you tell us
Alphabet
who
soup.
you are, what you're about, all of these wonderful things about Erika F. Jackson. And I want to know what that F is for also.
Fabulous. No. Okay. So
Okay.
the F is for Franielle. One of the
Okay.
reasons why F to my name because there's a lot of Erika Jacksons out there. I've come to find out along the way. So that was just a little piece of distinction to say, hey, this is part of me, Franielle. Also, I've been known to say, hey, Erika Franielle's here today, which means you get the first name and the middle initial and the so,
You
and
said
that's what
Erika
my mom used to
Cornell
call
is
me.
here.
Yes. And that's what my mom used to call me when it was time to get serious. So when it's time to get serious, you meet Erika Franielle. So that's part of why the F has evolved into my name professionally. Yes.
I love that. And tell us
Um,
about the rest of the Alphabet Soup.
so one of the accreditations is a certified marketing professional. And what does that mean? And initially, I received it through an organization that transitioned into being part of Leading Age. And that was how do we as senior living professionals market? How do we have those dialogues? How do we understand what that demographic is? Because yes, you go to school for marketing, because I do have a degree in marketing, but senior living marketing, that's a unique demographic. So how do we refine those searches? How do we look at demographics? How do we sell? How do we position our products? So that's one of the one of the groups I have behind my name. The other is I'm a tax credits professional, investment specialist. And that comes from my fun time of working in housing. Because the development for tax credit means there were certain things that we had to do along the way, maintain that accreditation, keep that type of housing that's for that special niche seniors that's not on the high end, they're not on that low end, they're that affordable market.
Erica, hold on one second because I'm getting I know you're in Chicago and I'm in Detroit right outside, right? And so I think we're having a little bit of lag here. And you know what? The spirit of the lag has been on my stream from the very beginning, but I am cursing it. I am
It's
cursing this
rebuke.
lag. Be gone, lag. So I don't know if you're getting any lag on your end with me, but I see a little bit on your end. And I
Okay.
don't want to miss what you said about, you said you're also a tax professional. I didn't know that. So can you repeat that part again for us? Because I think on your side of the stream, we were having some issues for a second.
Absolutely. So a tax credit specialist is something that I received along the way when I was working in affordable housing, which is that niche market. It's not that low income HUD housing, nor is it that high income traditional senior living. It's a very special, unique niche. And for us to be able to offer that, we had to comply with certain regulations based on the tax dollars that we were receiving for development and a commitment that the organization had made to making sure that we provide quality, affordable housing for the players. And that meant I had to really do some due diligence with who were moving into those communities.
I
So
hear you.
it was a fun time, but also seriously, because not everybody can afford $6,000, $11,000 a month
That's a
for the.
conversation. That's a conversation too that we need to have about the industry, about the senior living industry. That's a whole nother conversation for another day, right?
Yes.
Affordable housing, affordable housing. We need more of it. Erika, I'm having some issues on your end for a second, and I just want to let your camera kind of catch up because I don't want us to miss this conversation. Why don't you do me a favor? And I see that Deborah, hi Deborah. Deborah says that there looks like there's a little bit of issues with feed on your end. So I just want you to kind of
Okay.
move around. This is what happens when you're live, right?
Yes. Hi
If we
guys, can
have
you hear me?
to, if we have to, what we'll do, because I think the audio is most important, what we'll do is maybe take down your camera for a second and come back in. So that we
Okay.
can, if we continue to have problems. I'm able to see my LinkedIn comments. So if you're here from LinkedIn, if you're here from Facebook too, thank you so much. Your feedback is really important too, because when I'm looking live and Erika's looking live, we might not be seeing what you're seeing. So thanks for commenting and letting us know how the feed is showing up. Again, if you have been with me from the beginning, I've had the spirit of the awful devil lag on the, but I refuse. I'm not doing it today. So, Erika, let's get to the meat and potatoes. You wanted to talk about having hard conversations, leadership conversations, and I think that's so
Yes.
important. I feel like that is a theme of 2020 going into 2021.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, I keep seeing these conversations like tough conversations, hard conversations. How do you have them? But I don't like fluff, right? I don't like fluff. I don't like the fluffy stuff. I like to get down to the core. So, what kinds of hard conversations are you being a part of? And how are you able to have these conversations and maintain your professionalism, maintain, just the best level of professionalism you can, still having a tender heart, but also not letting stuff ride anymore because that's what's happening, right? People are starting to have these hard conversations. And how are you engaging?
Absolutely. So part of 2020 and all the, and I don't want to use the word chaos, but I think that's the best way to describe 2020 is a lot of chaos that's external.
Yeah.
It's put me in a position to really look at who I am as a leader and my experience from the last 21 years of things that I've let slide, things that I didn't have the confidence or the courage to have conversation about, and not realizing all the time that it was impacting me, but it was impacting others. And so part of the difficult conversations I've had, just as I have presented myself in this industry as a woman of color, and coming to terms with that and difficult conversations that I've had to have with my leadership team over things that I've observed and experienced. And it wasn't easy, but I think part of it came from the culture that had been created prior to that moment happening. That culture of trust, that culture of communication, that culture of let's talk about it so you can be professional, you can be effective, you can be the best version of you because that's who we want you to be.
Yeah.
And this year, I mean, I've addressed, and if anybody looks at me and follows me on LinkedIn, I have a lot of conversations about leadership and diversity and equity and inclusion. And this year, I kind of hit hey, I'm a woman of color and I'm a woman of color in the industry and things that are occurring that I am personally offended by. And wow, it has the potential to impact other people. So I actually had to have a conversation with my supervisor this year over some dialogue that I heard that I wasn't comfortable about race. And
Okay.
it's not easy.
So let me stop you for a second because what I heard you say is something that I think is so important. Before you can have the conversation, before you can have any kind of conversation, right? Anything that's prickly, right? I'm not talking about
Mhm.
can we change the brand of coffee we use in the lunchroom? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're talking about
Yes.
issues of equity, when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially when you are in a majority culture workplace. the one ingredient that I heard you just say, and we kind of glossed over it, I want to go back to it, is there needs to be trust. If
Yes.
there is no trust there, there is no conversation. And I'm speaking from experience when I say there was no trust. So I was like, deuces, I'm out. That
Exactly.
wasn't, but listen, I will also say, just having grown from that experience, that wasn't the right thing to do either. I should have
No.
pushed through. I should have held myself and others accountable. I didn't do that. By the grace of God, I was able to bounce into a whole nother area that has been good for me. But I have some regrets about how I handled situations. And it's hard to have those conversations if there's no trust. So tell me what that relationship was like, and how long did it take for you to get there so that you could have that kind of conversation, any kind of conversation, having to do with race and culture and even gender sometimes. And there's so many other forms of diversity that often get left off the table, right? But specifically talking about this race, ethnicity, gender. How did you do that? How did
I
that come
went
to
to the
fruition?
roots. I went to my roots. My roots are in sales. And in sales, you have to earn trust. You have to build relationship. You have to
Mhm.
peel that onion and get to that core in order to get to the solution, to get to the answer, the what's next. And so using that philosophy that I learned in sales, it's learning to do that with people that you work with. So it's transferring that skill set to, do I have a rapport and relationship? And sometimes that means getting out of your comfort zone. Most people would not know this, but I am an introvert by nature. But at the same time, I have to put myself out there. I have to reveal vulnerability to be able to receive vulnerability from other people. And that's that sharing stories and that authentic self that you bring to the table every day from the beginning. And fortunately, in the position that I'm in and the team that I work with, they met me during the interview process. They didn't meet the representative that shows up to get the job. They met Erica, who is passionate, but who's also a person who has a story that comes along with it. And some of the things that my leader did, the person that I report to, first time we met, and we worked together in a previous position, but we hadn't seen each other in years. Hey friend, how you doing? That was our action. You know, day one on the job, called me at 8 a.m. to say, I am so glad you're here. I'm glad you're working with me. Whatever you need, I'm a resource and a support. So they started that relationship from the beginning. We spent time together. We shared meals together when we were traveling during my onboarding experience. So I know his life story beyond his professional identity. And I knew him to be a person of character, that he would be my advocate. He would be my ally. So when
Yeah.
it came time to have that difficult conversation, it's really interesting because when I picked up the phone, the first words I said was, correct me if I'm wrong and you have permission to do so. So I'm revealing that, hey, I'm vulnerable and I'm open to
Yeah.
this. And if I'm wrong, check me. But this is how
So
I'm
it's
feeling.
two-way. So it's two-way communication, number one,
Yes,
right? Um, I need to be safe with you, but you need to be safe with me too, right? And the other thing
exactly.
you said that I love just now, because I've never heard this kind of analogy show up in the workplace, but it does. You said they got Erika F. Jackson. They didn't get the representative. I think that's so great because when I was growing up, I just remember like learning about like the representative when you're talking about your boyfriend, right?
Mhm.
That first
Mhm.
3 months is like, oh, you mean his representative, girl?
Yes,
You don't know who he
yes,
is. He's laying it on thick, right? But you're right, we do that in the workplace, and I have done that in the workplace. Like I hide the best parts of me,
mhm,
So now people who do work with me now who have known me for a long time, it's almost like they know me in a different way. And I realize that's because they were meeting my representative sometimes longer than 3 months, right? It could have been 3 years that I would not show you
yes.
who I really was. So going back to that trust, um, can't say enough like how important it is to have trust between teams so that we can show up, so that when it's time for me to have a tough conversation, I don't think it's going to be the end of my career with you because I told the truth.
Exactly. And that's earned on
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
between someone who shows up that, hey, I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO, I'm the VP, and this is what we're going to talk about today, from someone who you've never heard from someone who you've seen incredibly professional, constrained, and controlled situations.
Yeah.
That their story, you don't know what they did to get to where they are, to
Yeah.
understand, give empathy. And so folks who reveal that authenticity prior to the conflict give you the capacity to get to the other side of that conflict together. And I think that's part of the huge part of the reason why I've been able to navigate with some success this conversation now in my career.
So the other part is that all of that takes time too. Um, and like you said, that's all got to be earned.
Yes.
So what do you think? So for you personally, what really helped is that you had a relationship with this person before you started working with them. So let me
Yes.
ask you this. You've had a long career. Um, is this the first time you've ever felt so free in the workplace so that you could bring up some things that were maybe challenging or uncomfortable for others, even uncomfortable for yourself to bring up? Is this the first time that you've had that kind of freedom in the workplace?
I'm going to say yes and no, because part of it
Okay.
was me coming to that place and realization of comfort with myself, that it was
Okay.
okay for me to have that dialogue. I did not have to show one version of myself or another version of myself to
Yeah.
be what he wanted me to be that prescribed regional director or that prescribed marketing director, to bring
Yeah.
that America's Secret sauce to the table every single time. I had not always done that. Yes, you got the best version of me you got in that moment, and I would produce volumes of success for you, but you didn't get it 100% me. So, me,
Mhm.
comfort level changed the game. And then also that confidence that's come along with experience and just watching what is happening in the world today. And if we want to make change, we have to have conversation. We have to have the conflict to get to the construction on the other side that's going to make us all be successful.
Now that's the realest talk right there too, is the challenge of the day, just the climate of where we are right now. Having challenging conversations is not just something that we can have anxiety about in the workplace. Um, but we have a very contentious election coming up, and people are having issues at their dinner table. Like those are also challenging conversations. And so, I do a lot of work with companies on diversity, equity, and inclusion, why it's important. Let's talk about microaggressions. Like that's always the starting point, right? And I always tell them that it is not lost on me that when we're talking about the hard stuff, we're not just talking about the workplace. I'm talking about your home. I'm talking about your
Mm-hmm.
friendship. I'm talking about your community. And I just think about how over the last 4+ years, those conversations have really changed for me. Um, so I want to know for you. Sometimes I feel very, there's no other way to say it because I'm going to be the realest I can be. I feel out of control sometimes, like my emotions. Um, Not in a professional setting because I'm very measured in who I work with. I'm very I research, I do my homework, and hopefully my clients do with me too, right? That's why I've had the kinds of clients that I've had, and they've been phenomenal. But in my personal relationship, sometimes I'm like, let me get off this good internet because I feel like it, it's difficult to try to have a productive conversation on social media, number one, right? And sometimes that's the only way that we're able to communicate with people we haven't seen in a long time, or even with family and friends, right? And sometimes I choose not to have the conversation. I will say that even that's changed over the last year because I'm not having anybody that I'm in relationship with that I would be having to have challenging conversations with anymore. But in the past, it was like, I'm not talking to you because you're gonna make me say something foul, and I
Me
don't
out of my character.
one moment, legit. I'm just being listen. I'm gonna be too legit to quit because that's who I am. Okay. Sometimes it would be like, I'm not having this conversation because I don't feel seriously. honestly, I feel immature in my emotions right now to be having this conversation. That's different in the workplace. That's different in the workplace right now. So I'm having conversations with people who are like, I can't get up and leave the boardroom. Like I have to be able to have these conversations. So, what kind of advice can you give people in that situation?
Find your control. Find your source of your inner control. Something that everybody, and if anybody is on this live knows me, they always see me go to a conversation with a bottle of water. And the purpose of that water, one, yes, is to stay hydrated. That's good, but it tempers me. I can't talk
Mm.
while I'm drinking water. So if
Ooh,
I feel like I'm going to say something that I don't need to say, I make sure that I say it and I take a glass of water. There's times when I've walked out of meetings and I've gone through 2 bottles of water. There's times when I've walked out of meetings and I didn't take a sip. So I can control me. I cannot control the circumstances around me. So how I choose to respond to them, let me be tempered, let me be measured,
yeah.
and let me take control of my response in this situation instead of reacting. In transparency, I've reacted before professionally, and it didn't always work well. Sometimes that action helped, and sometimes it created a not so good environment. So
Yeah.
it's learning to temper myself and just let me take control of this 5 seconds, this 5 minutes, and decide how I'm going to choose how to respond to this specific situation. And it's really helped, all jokes aside, having some type of mechanism that you can visibly see in front of you that defines that.
I really like that. I like the bottle of water.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not really in those kinds of situations much anymore. Most of the people that I'm doing work with are not resistant to the kind of work that we're doing, at least not openly so. But that is something that I think about, like, how would I react to someone being super forceful with me? Because, I can give it, girl. I can give it the same way I can get it. But that's not always the best policy, especially when you're talking about being professional, So I really like what you said. So hey, listen, if you're just joining us right now, whether you're on Facebook or LinkedIn, thank you so much. You're tuning into YouTube Sundays with Ayana King, Maximum Communications, and my friend Erika F. Jackson. And we're talking about having hard conversations and still being able to have them in a measured and tempered way. This is really something that leaders need to learn how to do. So, Erika, one thing that I have noticed with leaders is that um, oh, Erika, what happened? She's coming back. Come on back, Erika.
I'm
Okay,
here.
I see
Okay.
you when you're back. Um, One of the things that I noticed about leaders is it's not that they are, how do they have the conversation? It's that they don't have them at all. They don't have
No,
them at all. There's a lot of avoidance, whatever that conversation may look like. Maybe it's about diversity and inclusion, but maybe it's about how come I've been working for you for 5 years and I haven't gotten a raise. Maybe it's that conversation too, for anyone. Um, and I see that leaders avoid tough conversations. So you're in a position of leadership now. How do you initiate the conversation, not just have it? Because sometimes it unfolds because of just circumstance, but sometimes it's you having to bring that conversation as a leader. And so I know your personality. You told us you're going to bring it. How can you? What kind of tips can you give other leaders to do the same thing when maybe they're an introvert too, but maybe they just can't do it. They just have a hard time even bringing some of this stuff up. What's your nudge for them?
first, do not wait until that moment to be comfortable with that person having the conversation.
Mm,
If you've never built a rapport with them, then it's going to be incredibly awkward. So whatever internal feelings that you're having, they're going to manifest in that situation, and the awkwardness of the moment is going to be there in its own presence just because the relationship wasn't there. So I encourage you to think way before those moments happen. Once you get into those moments, understand how you communicate. And they talk about code switching and mirror moments, but
yeah.
that person going to receive you? How does that person communicate? How do they receive communication? And think through your process prior to having it. People tease me because you can see me in a room and it looks like I'm having a conversation, but I am having and I'm by myself, I'm having a conversation because I'm thinking through, if I say this, how will they respond to that? Is that going to get me the end result that I want? And that's relationship or in progress. So think through those conversations and with some intentionality to determine how you want to be received, how that person is going to perceive you, and then how you're going to go about it. And draft it out. Just like, leadership, we do presentations all the time. We don't stand up off the cuff and just do a PowerPoint presentation that we've never reviewed. We review them. And that's the same thing you do in those difficult conversations. But that's the roots of knowing your people, that relationship component of it. It just all goes back to that.
So that's going to lead me. I'm going to put up this question from Patrick. Patrick says, toxic work environments make it extremely difficult to have the difficult conversations. Any thoughts about that? Thank you, Patrick.
Absolutely. So when you think about toxic work environments, and I've been in one before, I think everybody can identify a toxic work environment.
Yeah.
I did a LinkedIn post a while ago about, let's think about that environment before you got into it. And were there things that you did to contribute to it? You don't always, but sometimes that not speaking up, not responding, or going along with it instead of addressing it kind of perpetuates that situation. Guilty charge, I use the example of the blind CC email, or when you see add folks on the thread that weren't on the thread without introduction or why they're being brought to, and you just go with it. Versus, can we pause this for a second? Help me understand why.
Yeah.
And that comes from, again, a place of vulnerability. Help me understand why we're in this place and how did we get there. And that comes from some mirror moments to see, did I contribute in any way, shape, or form? And on the other hand, what's going on with this other person that we have gotten to this place? Because I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I'm going to be toxic today.
Right. It's a slow drip, isn't it? It's a really slow drip.
Overnight. It's toxic culture. No.
So let me tell you something, full transparency. I contributed in a way that I didn't realize until that's why I was doing the dagger. I was like, oh, that hurt. Let me tell you how I contributed. I was a coward. Ugh. And I even hate saying that about myself because I see myself often as strong in a lot of instances, but in this particular work environment, I was a coward. And I did like play along with some stuff, and I played right in the middle, and it was just gross. And I just wasn't liking myself because I saw myself as weak. I did. And then I started feeling helpless, and I started, it was just like I became a victim. But when you say the way you said, I contributed to that because I could have said, no, I'm not going to play your game. I'm not going to get here and talk to you early in the morning before my boss comes because I don't want her to see me. And I could have just been like, you know what, we're grown women and this is stupid. I could have called everybody out. And in calling everybody else, I could have called myself out and I didn't. So in that way, I contributed. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up in the way that you did. I was responsible.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. I've done the same thing.
I never did that email garbage though, because I was always like, ugh, I don't like that. I never did the emails, but I knew somebody who would have someone in their office when they were on other calls so that they would have somebody else there. And I'd be like, this is so gross. I didn't like being a part of it, but guess what? I didn't get up and leave. So I was complicit, right? This is such a good conversation. I'm glad that you brought that up. If you're just joining us on Facebook or LinkedIn, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. I'm talking to my friend, Erika F. Jackson, and we're talking about having hard conversations, leadership stuff, right? Having hard conversations, how do you do it? And really, just by proxy, we just kind of shifted into holding ourselves responsible and accountable when we are part of the breakdown. Or really the reluctance to have the kind of conversations that we need to have. So this has been really good. Let me see what Deborah says. Deborah says, hi, Deborah. She says some work environments are so toxic and leadership is so complicit. The best option is to depart gracefully and move the heck on to a new and healthy work environment. Come on, Deborah. Or you know what else? You can start your own business. Woo!
Yes. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. But
Word.
make that transition because you don't carry that energy into your next
That's
position.
right.
Because
That's
you
right.
will. Because when you leave job and you go to another job, and just like in our personal lives, if you don't deal with the dirt from the previous relationship, it's going to be in your house still.
That's
So
right.
part of that is, how did that make me feel?
Yeah.
Make others feel, and how do I want to be better and different in my next opportunity?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at today, because I had been complicit in the past. I had contributed to the past. And
Same.
mad at myself, like I allowed this to happen. I
Yeah.
could. It's like I'm the biggest advocate for Erika is Erika, and I didn't
Yeah.
advocate for myself, and I allowed myself to be treated that way.
Yeah.
So deal with that motion, recognize what I did, and in my next situation, when I was presented with it, I felt comfortable having the conversation because I had done the work
Yeah.
to that situation where I had to acknowledge an issue from myself.
Yeah. So I'll also say too that I had to learn. It sounds so crazy to say it this way, but I had to learn who I was and how I showed up in the world when I didn't have a boss. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was so used to really being told what to do, and I don't mean this in a burdening type of way. That's just how we are when we work for someone else, right? I was so used to showing up professional Ayana that I don't know. I think it was almost stunning when I started showing up as just casual Ayana, you know. But I started doing that because I realized like business is extremely personal for me. I'm not a person that says there's business and then there's this personal side. No, it meshes for me. And so in order for me to have really good business relationships, I need to be able to be myself. I need to be able to show up on a Sunday with my lions, on whether it's Sunday or whether it's Wednesday, right? I need to just be
Exactly.
able to show up, and there's something to be said about code switching, and there's something to be said about tone policing that I did a lot of that stuff to myself, and it took me a long time
Mhm.
to realize that I
It does.
was doing that, and it was really gross once I realized, like, man,
And it's
yeah,
such a
you're doing that.
disservice to you. It's a
Legit.
disservice to you. It's a disservice to the people around you because they don't get to receive all of your awesomeness. And I'm not
Yeah.
just saying that because I know you, but it's like everybody
Thank you.
has this inner awesome. And when you allow that to,
Mm-hmm.
people receive it. I
Yeah.
think about a position that, yes, it was crazy leadership, but when someone told me that you're a de facto leader, I did not have the title manager or supervisor, but people gravitated to me for a reason. It was because I was being
Yeah.
myself. And so
Yeah.
even when I interview people now, I ask the question, tell me a time when you were a leader when you didn't have that title, because that makes you think of who you are at the
Yeah.
core. And how do you bring that every day to your team and to situations? And that's where that leadership comes from.
Yeah.
And not everybody's the same type of leader. Some people have that capacity for empathy, and some people have that capacity to earn trust very quickly because they love to listen. They love to hear people's stories, and
Mm-hmm.
that is a place of understanding. So you have to figure out who you are on the inside,
Yeah.
and bring that every day. And when people start to see the same you in every situation, then you've hit a place of leadership.
Yeah.
Because with my sales team, they got Erika. With the CEO, she got Erika, which wasn't always
Yeah.
the best situation, but it worked out because I'm like, I'm only saying what I'm saying because you've put me in this position as your trusted counselor, as someone who's going to give you sound advice. I would never tell you anything that's going to create harm for you or this company. And this isn't a good idea. And I'm sorry it doesn't sound good, but in the end, we're all going to win. And that comes from
Yeah.
that trust of just showing up as yourself. And it's really empowering as a
It is.
leader to do that. And the people around you will appreciate that because your little quirks are going to balance somebody else's little quirks, and you're going to be a well-rounded team versus having an army of the same people doing the same things, which
Yeah.
doesn't lead to progress.
Right, right. The other thing I think that leaders have to unlearn is, for a long time, leaders are told, were told, still are told, um, to hide their emotions, right? Don't be overly joyous. Definitely don't cry and show any form of weakness. But man, I think about the leaders who I gravitated towards. Those supervisors who I'm still close with, who I consider friends now. And they were all people, men and women, different backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, all of that, right? They were people who showed who they were. They didn't hide it. They didn't hide it.
Yes.
And I just always appreciated that. And so now, like, that's just who I want to be. That's who I am in my home. That's who I am in my personal relationships. So of course, like, that's who I have to be in business. And that's when I said, like, there's this overlap for me. There's not this professional Ayana and this business Ayana anymore. And for a long time, they were two separate people. Like, I would hide, like you said, like, the best parts of yourself. So yeah, this is such a good conversation. Thank you. So I'm going to switch gears because we're
Okay.
already 36 minutes in. This conversation has just rolled on. I love having leadership conversations. I love all your posts. Before we go into me getting into your business, because I'm about to get in your business, okay? I just want to let you know
Okay.
that ahead of time. Why don't you let people know where they can find you, Erika? Tell us what you're doing, who you're working for right now, and where they can find you.
Absolutely. So part of that, like we just finished talking about, is who are you? And I've been in the senior living industry for 21 years. I've worked regionally, I've worked nationally, I've worked locally, I've worked affordable, I've worked low income, I've worked high income, and I've learned a lot along the way. So, yes, I have a day job, which is awesome. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have professionally, but I also have what I call Samaritan Solutions. And that's where I get to do the advocacy, the education, and the research part of serving seniors, because education is so huge. And I know in some communities there's not a lot of knowledge about what does senior living mean? What are the options? Because people historically only think two things. They think the nursing home,
Yeah.
the old folks home. And there's so much in between, and there's so many other options. So what I love to do is talk to people about that. And that's where Samaritan Solutions came from. As I evolved professionally, my friends were the ones who I started answering questions for. And I'm like, this is why I've been called to this position. This is why I've been given this incredible opportunity to learn this industry along the way so I can help. So now that I have friends who have parents that are in these situations, my phone rings. What's happening?
Yeah.
On? And they're like, well, my mom has this and my mom has that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. She doesn't need to go to the nursing home. Here's some other options where you can get help at home for her. So that's where that is my passion. And so through Samaritan Solutions, which I have formally started to launch this year because I've been doing it. And it's like people knew it, people knew my phone number, but now I'm pulling all those pieces together because in this day and age, education is going to make the difference in the outcome for the next generation of seniors. And guess what? Their family members, because aging doesn't just impact that one person, it impacts the entire community. So you can find me with Samaritan Solutions, or just through my LinkedIn bio, my contact information is on there. But I also like to educate leaders. Guess what? We make the difference in an organization. And part of my post talked about that all the time, of what type of leader are you? Are you okay with asking the difficult questions of yourself? Are you okay with asking the difficult questions for other people? And being that resource. Fortunately, I've been privileged to touch a lot of people, growing talent or selecting talent and seeing them grow and have a network of people who know other people who can help provide solutions. So really, Samaritan Solutions is just a big old ball of resource for providers, for end users, for people, for community, if someone has a question about senior living services, if someone has questions about leadership, we're here. That's what we do, or that's what I do. So
I love that.
yeah.
That's perfect. All right, thank you for that. So, crazy year. 2020 is about to wrap up. So I got a
Woo.
couple questions for you. Yeah, bye 2020. See ya.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself this year?
Whew. I'm a lot stronger
Yeah.
than I knew. Um, and I'm more resolved than I've ever been to those things that are core to me. And that kind of emerged in this last 10 months. I've transitioned a job. I've gone from traveling, my identity, because people, as much as we don't want to link our identity to what we do, my identity completely changed this year. I wasn't used to being at home. I was used to traveling. I haven't traveled for work since March the 2nd. So I become this new person professionally, immersing myself into a new team confidently and being authentically me without hesitation. And
Yeah.
I got comfortable doing that. Like I say things at work that I would have never said before. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have anything of value to add to the conversation. I don't say something just for the sake of saying it because we're a
Mhm.
delegation, or I'm going to agree with everybody because we have this group cosign. If I have nothing of value to say, my team jokes. Erika says silence is golden, so her silence is in this moment. And I think I've learned how to be me, and this for the first time in 21 years professionally, and
Yeah.
I could tell the difference in just how I'm enjoying that fear and that worry. Like, I'm here for a reason. You picked me for this job. I applied for this job. I'm here today. How do I help? And that's showing me every day authentically. And I think that's the biggest lesson from 2020 that I've had.
You glitched for us on the second on that last part. So summarize that last part for us really quick.
Authentically showing up to be Erika every day.
Authentically
Um,
showing it.
and whatever version of that is, because I'm not human. Acknowledging when I've made a mistake, or acknowledging when someone else has done incredibly well, and being
Wow.
fearless with that.
Yeah.
And that's been, building those relationships that way this year. And I think that's really made the difference for me professionally, where I'm in a good space.
That's
There's
good.
been, it's a good year. So, as I put it, in a year where there's been so much lack and loss, I've had
Yeah.
abundance and additions, and I'm very grateful for that. And
Yeah.
looking at my experience from that perspective.
Yeah. So I love that you said showing up authentically. So that's been something that I've learned about myself. Although I gotta say, like I've been doing that. I don't have any pressure to not show up as myself now, right? So that's like I just show up. I just hairs all over the place. Hello, everybody on my workshops. I'm just like, hello, everyone. I don't feel like I have to button it all up, and I don't do that. But if I can say that I've learned anything about myself this year is gosh, I always knew that I was an introvert, but this year for sure, like there's no doubt. It's going to be very hard to get me to do any workshops in person. I realize that I just really like being home. I feel grounded at home. I feel safe at home, and safety is really huge for me right now. I realized over the last couple years, I've noticed that I've had a lot of anxiety. I don't like to I'm not gonna call myself like an anxious person, but I do like sometimes I'm just really wound up, and I have some issues with my ears that really make balance a challenge for me. And I realized that when I was doing in-person workshops and in-person networking, I was always so anxious about that. If I stumble, if I turn around and hit something, I would just be worried about it. And now, like, I don't worry about any of that because this is what I do. I sit here and I don't worry about falling. But I just really enjoy being at home. I haven't traveled. I haven't done a whole lot since the pandemic, and I'm okay with that. Like being at home hasn't bothered me. So, what's a goal you have? before the end of the year? Like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What are you working on? Do you have a goal?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to rely on my friends and network to hold me accountable for
Okay.
to get my website launched. It's like,
Yeah.
and what's that website going to look like, and who's it going to be? Because I have to say a phrase that I learned from somebody else. My website is a person for me, and that is somebody to me. So how do I bring that to that website, to bring that Erika, to make her alive in that platform? And that's going to take a little bit of courage, because it's like, it's really easy to do it without that website, because it's just word of mouth, which is so awesome and wonderful, because people know you and they say, hey, call Erika, you can trust her, call Erika, she's family, she'll take care of you. But to put myself out there, again, another layer of vulnerability of, hey, world, it's Erika Jackson,
Yeah.
advocate, educator, and researcher.
Yeah.
Reveal that side of myself to the world boldly. That's going to be the end of my year.
Okay. So for me, end of the year goal for me, I want to go somewhere. I don't want to go on a plane, but Michigan this time of year is so beautiful. Um, it's so gorgeous right now, and I've been very careful when I go out. I always wear a mask. I went to dinner last weekend outside. It was cold, but we sat outside. I'm open to doing a lot of things outdoors as long as I can be outdoors. And I really want to go back to Frankenmuth. I took a trip to Frankenmuth. It's like Bavarian country there, and they've got like the Christmas store and they've got that good chicken. And I like to knit. And so they've got like this awesome yarn store. And I just want to hop in the car and go. I'm not going to drive, okay? Because it's 2 hours. I told you about my balance. So if I drive for a really long time, I can get there, but then I got to sleep the rest of the day just because my eyes process things differently. So my husband doesn't know it yet, but we're going to Frankenmuth. Right. We're gonna go to Frankenmuth, and you know what? We're taking the kids and the dog. How about that? Everybody's going. So that's my
You
goal.
could have some fun and get in the back seat and actually ride, because the view from the back seat is entirely different. I've come to find out. I'm like, yes, I will
Listen,
gladly see now.
listen. I think I'll do it. I think I'll ride in the back and be queen for a day.
There you go.
But you know where else I want to go next year? I need to get back to Chi-Town. So we haven't been in a
Yes,
couple of years, and I love
come see me.
Chicago. I would not come into town and not see you. But it's so beautiful. And I'll tell you, the last time we went, how foolish were we? But we bundled up our kids and we went the week between Christmas and New Year. It was so cold. I was like, what are we doing?
But you
What are
want
we
the
doing?
authentic Chicago experience.
Okay, got it, got it. Not gonna get it again. Not gonna get it
Yeah.
again. Listen, Erika, I've loved talking to you. I love being connected to you. I can't wait to see you in person,
Yeah.
because I will be getting to Chicago in 2021. And I just want to say, good luck on every endeavor. I pray that every door is opened unto
Thank
you,
you.
and just keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. It's
Thank you.
inspiring to me, and I know it's inspiring to other people too. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And you too.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you. Hey, listen, if you joined us today for You Choose Sundays, thank you so much. I'm coming back next Sunday. I don't know who with. I got to look at my calendar. I don't know what to say. But hey, if you showed up and you stuck around, God bless you. God keep you. I'm so happy for this channel and that, we're getting rid of the spirit of lag. Bye. So I'll catch you next Sunday, everybody. Hey, enjoy the rest of your weekend.